we can't just go and make an even deal with China. We have to make a much better deal with China because right now they have a very unfair playing field, and I'm turning it around. So we're getting 25% of $250 billion, and now we'll be getting 10% of probably close to $350 billion. It's a lot of money. China has to do a lot of things to turn it around, but you'll be seeing they've got to do a lot of things. It goes on September 1st, and frankly, if they don't do them, I can always increase it very substantially. In other words, I could increase it. If I wanted to, I could increase it to a very much higher number.
Well, the markets are sinking today, hitting a 6-month low as President Trump blasts China as, quote, currency manipulation on Twitter. Now, based on the historic, based on historic currency manipulation by China, it is now even more obvious to everyone that Americans are not paying for the tariffs. China has always used currency manipulation to steal our businesses and factories, hurt our jobs, suppress our workers' wages, and harm our farmer prices. Not anymore. Joining me now, Trump economic advisor Steve Moore, the chief economist at the Heritage Foundation. Steve, thanks for joining us.
Well said. I mean, you got it exactly right, Charles. By the way, can you name any country in the history of the world that ever got rich by devaluing their currency? I mean, it's not a very good economic strategy. No, I mean, it just doesn't work. And the fact is, in response to the tariffs, they're devaluing their currency, which means that the Chinese are bearing the cost of these products, these tariffs, not American consumers. Now, I'm not defending the tariffs.
Sure,
I mean, we've seen a big sell-off. But this idea that Goldman Sachs put out this ridiculous, idiot report yesterday saying, oh, the American consumers are bearing the whole cost of this. Like, what are they talking about? If they devalue their currency, that means that something that used to cost $10 now costs $9. You put the 10% tariff on, it costs what it did before, and China bears the cost.
Right.
Okay?
And that's not even...
That's just math,
right? And that's not even getting to the point where these Chinese exporters have to lower their prices anyway.
Absolutely.
They're talking to the U.S. counterparts, and they're saying, I'm not going to pay $1 for that LOL doll. I'll give you 90 cents for it.
If the Chinese could just, pass the cost on to the consumers of a 10% tariff, or in some cases 25% tariffs, they would do it. They would just raise their prices.
Sure.
But they can't do it.
We wouldn't have this conversation.
I get so angry because there's such a deficient economics here that's being. You're dealing with a country now. Let's say this is not a free economy. This is a totalitarian government. It's central planned. They've become a menace, and we're going to have to fight them one way or the other. My advice to the president has been, look, get the best deal you can from now with China so we can go to 2020 with a strong economy, killing their economy. But the problem is we're not dealing with rational people in Beijing. I mean, the rational thing for them to do would be to make a deal with Trump. Both economies would benefit. There's nothing Trump is asking the Chinese to do that is unreasonable, right?
Well, their goal, to this world domination, it relies heavily on the ability to continue to steal our intellectual property.
Well, that means, that they're incapable of producing innovation and technology. Maybe not.
Maybe at the pace that they want.
Yeah.
Because I think they are capable.
Well, here's the thing. Because they have no respect for intellectual property, this is actually hurting their own research and development because the Chinese companies are stealing from other Chinese companies. So, it's bad for the world economy when you have the second largest economy in the world that is not respecting intellectual property rights. That reduces innovation, that reduces technology, that reduces research and development. No, Donald Trump doesn't back down.
Do 10% possibly go to 25% then?
I don't know, Charles. I honestly don't know. I don't think anybody knows the answer to that question. But I don't see Trump capitulating. Do you? I mean, you've known him.
No,
I've known him for a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, he believes this is the fight, the epic battle of our time. And he happens to be right about that. I mean, this is the new Cold War we're in, for better or for worse, and we can't lose. The worst possible outcome, for those who are watching this in the stock market, the worst possible outcome for America and the future of our economy is to capitulate. We can't give it to China at this point.
Yeah.
We just can't. Yeah. We're dealing with irrational people over there, and that makes it really difficult to get a deal. And apparently they're willing to hurt their own companies, their own people. Somebody asked me earlier, well, gee, this is so obvious that it's hurting their own people. They don't care. This is a totalitarian government. They believe in power.
I think that it's important to realize that the Chinese have only been at this capital markets thing for the last 15 years, and while they're smart, I equate it to they have one of those, like they're at a circus spinning 20 plates. They have to have all plates spinning all at once, and if one of them falls, they all fall. And in this case, what's happening in China is they have to have dollars to sell, to buy their own currency, to hold it up. If they were to ever free float their currency, I think it would drop 30 or 40%. And the reason being is they claim to be 15% of global GDP in dollar terms, but less than 1% of global transactions settle in their own currency. And so they prop their currency up. Everyone calling them a currency manipulator, they're trying to hold this whole thing together. If they were to let it go and allow all the wealthy Chinese to get their money out and buy more houses in Vancouver and London in the U.S. and send more of their kids to school in the U.S., you would see their currency collapse. And it's why they keep such a tight lid on it. So back a month ago when we were negotiating with the Chinese, we had a 150-page document that they had said they were going to sign. And the night before, they took 50 pages out of the agreement. Anything that was measurable and enforceable got taken out. And they said, we'll sign this agreement. And so they negotiated with us in bad faith, and that's why the talks broke down last time. Now with Lighthizer and Mnuchin going to China to meet with them, what just happened here is China said, we need you to drop all tariffs on all of our goods. We need you to stop disallowing Huawei in the U.S., and we need you to release the Huawei CFO before we even engage in talks. And we say, that's not going to happen. So the Chinese negotiators stood up and walked out of the room. And so somehow we're the ones that are negotiating in bad faith, or we're the ones where the president's tweeting something and it's all his fault, when the Chinese are the ones that have been negotiating in bad faith all along. Then what happens next is they start to lose control of their currency, and I think that's what you're seeing some of today. You could say it's retaliation.
Why do you think they're losing dollars? I mean, they have trillions of dollars in ammunition. What makes you think that they're having a shortage of dollars? Why not just take their word for it, which is they're guiding the currency where the market is pressuring the currency because the Chinese economy is slowing because the administration keeps putting tariffs on it?
Did you just say, why don't I take China's word for it? That's pretty funny. But
this is a time, I think, when Xi Jinping, the Chinese ruler, is just no other good options. And so what he's doing right now is lashing out. So, for instance, although he no longer has the Hong Kong portfolio on the Politburo Standing Committee, he once did. And what we are seeing today is the logical conclusion of his hardline policies. This is important because Xi has no one else to blame for this. He has unprecedented power, which means he's also got unprecedented accountability. And so he's got to, at this time, come up with a good solution, or his enemies are going to come out of the woodwork and harm him. Carrie Lam, who's the Hong Kong chief executive, has pushed forward an extradition bill. And this bill would expand the number of jurisdictions to which Hong Kong can extradite people to. And one of those additional jurisdictions is the People's Republic. This was extremely unpopular. Of course, it was unpopular, would be unpopular with the pro-democracy forces, but it was also unpopular with the business community in Hong Kong. And the reason is that they were worried that their business partners in Beijing or wherever would then start to use this extradition bill to pull them into the mainland, where, of course, there's no rule of law, there's no fairness, there's no justice. But I think Xi Jinping might do it. And the reason he might do it is if he feels that the Hong Kong protests are creating a contagion of inspiring people on the mainland to protest. People on the mainland don't sympathize with Hong Kong people at all. But that's not the point. The point is that Hong Kong people, by pushing Carrie Lam around, are giving inspiration to people in China that they could do the same thing. And especially at a time when the Chinese economy is in severe trouble, I think that you could see Xi Jinping thinking that this is an existential issue for the Communist Party. And so although he doesn't want to do it, he very well may, because he feels that the existence of the Communist Party is at stake. So then you have President Trump come along and say, look, we're not putting up with Chinese theft of intellectual property anymore. Right. You have the Section 301 tariffs, Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974 as a remedy for IP theft. So a lot of bad things are happening for at the Chinese economy at the same time. And that's why I think you've got a Xi Jinping who is lashing out, because he doesn't see any alternative. He's really trapped. China has been waging, a low-level guerrilla campaign against the U.S. economy since the early 1990s or whatever. And
break that down for me. What are the components of that?
First of all, violating their trade obligations to us. First of all, in their bilateral agreements with the U.S., but then in the World Trade Organization accession agreement. Plus also just the theft of U.S. intellectual property. China steals hundreds of billions of dollars of U.S. IP a year. You know, some people say it's only 150 billion. Some people say 600 billion. I mean, if you go through the U.S. Trade Representative's report of March 2018, plus the updates for this year, or the Commission on the Theft of U.S. Intellectual Property, the Blair-Huntsman Commission, 2013, plus the number of updates, those all show that China is somewhere, maybe pick your number, $300 to $400 billion. This is a grievous wound because if we can't commercialize innovation, we don't have an economy of the future, and that's what China is going after through their industrial policies, all the rest of it. So, you know, we didn't have a choice. The only issue that historians are going to ask, look, you know, when they look back at our period is, why did it take so long for an American president to start defending the U.S. economy? So this is on us. The Chinese are villains, they're criminals, all the rest of it, but this is on us to protect our own economy. Really needed that. And to give you a sense of where things were, at the Osaka G20, end of June, Trump and Xi Jinping sit down, they have an interim deal. Chinese agree to buy U.S. agricultural products. We agree to give them waivers for Huawei. This is a deal with all the benefits to China, none of them for us, because the Chinese were going to buy ag products anyway. So we didn't really benefit from this, because if they didn't buy from us, we would have sold to somebody else. The Chinese cannot even honor a deal that is entirely in their benefit, which shows, I think, the dislocations in the Chinese political system. There are troubles there. We don't know exactly what they are, but countries don't make stupid decisions like this unless there's something really wrong at the heart of their political system. And remember, with all this commerce, we are feeding the Chinese war machine. You know, you have these PLA generals openly boasting about killing Americans. So why are we trading with these guys? And by the way, it's gone beyond just boasting, because last year they temporarily caused those eye injuries to those 2 pilots of the C-130 over Djibouti. Also, you had the sonic attacks at the Guangzhou consulate causing brain injuries to our diplomats. We shouldn't be trading with a country that is harming our people. Trump's not driving this. It's Xi Jinping was pushing everybody in a direction they don't want to go, and we have to recognize the comprehensive nature of this challenge, and we've got to defend ourselves. That's why Trump is a wartime president. We have to oppose China across the board. We've got to stand for freedom and democracy. We've got to stand for the international system that China is attacking, this Westphalian system that Xi Jinping has been trying to undermine. This is across the board. We have to oppose them, because this is where we defend our society. It's unfortunate, but with Xi Jinping, you just have to push him over the edge of the cliff.